We all know cyber attacks on schools are getting worse, right? The old ways of defending them, well, they just aren't cutting it anymore. So today, we're not just going to talk about the problem, we're going to peel back the curtain on the new playbook attackers are using, and most importantly, show you how to build a defense that can actually stand up to it.
Okay, get this. This isn't something out of a spy movie. This is a real-life offer. £500,000 plus a cut of the profits, all for a set of login details. It just goes to show you the biggest threats aren't always some complex piece of code. Sometimes it's just a tempting offer whispered to someone on the inside. The game is totally changed, and you can see the stakes are unbelievably high.
So that really begs the question, right? Why schools? You'd think they'd be off limits, but for cybercriminals, they've become an absolute goldmine. Let's really dig into why that is.
All right, first up, we're going to look at the unique cocktail of vulnerabilities that makes a school just so appealing to these attackers. It's this perfect storm of having really valuable stuff and some pretty surprising weaknesses.
And it really is a perfect storm. I mean, think about it. Schools are sitting on mountains of incredibly sensitive data, student records, parent information, you name it. But at the same time, they're juggling these super tight budgets. This often means they're running systems with what we call KEVs, or known exploited vulnerabilities. These are basically security holes that hackers already know how to break into. It's like having a known bad lock on your front door. Then you throw in the fact that schools rely so heavily on all these third-party edtech apps, and you've basically rolled out the red carpet for attackers.
Okay, so we know why schools are a target. But what about how? Because that part of the story is changing all the time. These criminals are smart, and they're constantly coming up with new ways to get around the usual defenses.
So let's crack open their new playbook, shall we? I mean, we're miles away from those old, terribly misspelled phishing emails. The stuff we're seeing today is slick, it's targeted, and it's all designed to play on our own human nature. One of the big ones is called vishing, which is basically voice phishing. Just picture this. You get a frantic phone call, and it sounds like it's coming from the head office. They create this massive sense of panic, pressuring you to give up a password or some other piece of info right now. It's incredibly effective because it preys on our natural instinct to help out and to trust people in charge.
And it's not just one thing. That's what makes it so dangerous. Now we're seeing AI that can write perfectly convincing, personalized emails, the kind that are almost impossible to tell are fake. We're even seeing malicious QR codes slapped on flyers in the school hallway. And here's the kicker. Attackers aren't always trying to break down the front door anymore. They're sneaking in through the side by hacking into the ed tech companies that schools rely on every single day.
You know, the huge shift to remote learning really threw gasoline on this fire. Schools had to scramble to get things like VPNs set up, and honestly, a lot of those systems are now out of date or haven't been patched. To a hacker, that's not just a weakness, it's a wide-open door straight into the network.
So, with all these threats moving so fast, you're probably thinking, how on earth can a school keep up? And look, it can feel a bit overwhelming, I get it, but it is not hopeless. The answer isn't some magic piece of software. It's about changing your mindset from being reactive to being proactive, with a strategy that has multiple layers. So let's start building that strategy right now.
All right, this is the game plan. We're going to walk through the actual concrete steps any school can take to build a digital defense that is genuinely tough to break.
Okay, here are the 6 key steps. We start with the tech basics, right? Layered security, things like firewalls and endpoint protection, and multi-factor authentication or MFA on everything. No excuses. But notice how quickly we pivot to people and process. You have to train everyone, staff and students, to be a kind of human firewall. You need an incident response plan that you've actually practiced, so when something goes wrong, it's just muscle memory. Of course, keep all your software patched and updated. And finally, you have to be super strict about vetting your third-party vendors. It all proves that security isn't just something you buy and install, it's a culture that you have to build from the ground up.
And that's such a critical point to understand. All the technical defenses in the world won't save you if your data is a complete mess. You're still wide open to attack. Real, lasting security is built on a foundation of smart data management.
So this leads us to a really powerful shift in thinking. A lot of us hear about data regulations like GDPR and just groan. We see it as this bureaucratic headache. But what if we looked at it differently? What if we saw GDPR not as a chore, but as a blueprint for building a really strong security defense?
Just think about this number for a second. 6 years. In the UK, that's typically how long a school has to keep a student's data after they've already left. That one number really drives home the massive long-term responsibility that schools have.
It makes you ask the tough questions, right? Do you actually know where all of that data from 6 years ago is? Who can still access it? And is there a plan to securely get rid of it when the time comes?
And you have to think about where this data lives. The software you use for your help desk is different from your main student information system. Your help desk is more tactical. It's about dealing with individual requests as they come in. But your main system, that's strategic. It's the mothership that sets the rules for how data is handled for a student's entire time at the school and beyond. They both handle sensitive data, sure, but they need completely different security and compliance game plans.
And you know, this all leads us to what is maybe the most important piece of the entire puzzle: the people, the human element. Because you can have the fanciest, most expensive software, but if nobody knows who is responsible for what, your whole strategy is just going to fall apart. So for this last part, let's get really clear on who needs to do what, because this is so important. Cybersecurity and data compliance can't just be the IT department's problem. It has to be a mission that everyone in the school shares.
Okay, there are a few roles here that are absolutely non-negotiable. First, you need a designated data protection officer, a DPO, who owns the whole strategy. Your IT staff, they're the gatekeepers, and they have to be super careful about managing who has access to what. And you absolutely must have clear practice procedures for everything, from handling data requests to reporting a breach. Because believe me, the middle of a crisis is the worst possible time to be trying to figure out who's supposed to call who.
But ultimately, this all has to stretch way beyond the IT office. Security truly becomes everyone's responsibility when you've got regular training for all your staff, when you have policies for handling data that are actually clear and easy to follow, and, this is key, when senior leadership is actively involved in providing oversight. It has to be baked right into the school's culture.
So, I'll leave you with this question to think about. In a world where these threats are changing by the minute, not by the year, being up to date isn't a destination. It's a constant process. It's about vigilance, it's about training, and it's about always getting better. The real question is, are you sure you're ready?